Hello lovelies, I'm Christina and today I'm giving you my August wrap-up. If you are new here, I make videos book related and also some vlogs, and if you'd like to stick around and see more of it, hit that subscribe button and that bell button as well so you'll get notified the next time I post a video. Now let's jump into the books that I read in August. Now the first book that I read was Aphrodite Made Me Do It by Trista. I'm just gonna have my notes here because my pregnancy brain is all over the place these days. But yes, this is a collection of poetry, prose, and also some illustrations as well. I really enjoyed this. It's not one that will really stick hard with me like Milk and Honey did, but it was still a really enjoyable read. And it did have a few poems and prose that really got to me and made me feel something, which is what I look for in poetry in general. I think it's hard to rate poetry because it means something so personal to the writer, and it means something so different to each reader because it depends so much on how it hits them. So I think it's hard to rate poetry, but for me this was a 3.5. I really enjoyed it, but not one of my absolute favorites. Next up is another poetry collection, and that is Love and Misadventure by Leav. This one, definitely not my favorite. I've read Lullabies by Leav before, which I liked, but didn't love that one either. And I just think there's something about the way that Leav structures her poetry that doesn't really sit that well with me. It's not that it's bad poetry, it's just not my kind of poetry. It feels often like the poetry is written more for the rhyme than the actual meaning behind it. I could be absolutely wrong about that, and I know a lot of people love Leav's poetry, but unfortunately it's just not my cup of tea. I end up giving this a 2 out of 5. Next up is Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. This one is a story about a coffee shop in Tokyo where the people that come there can travel back in time. But there are certain sets of rules. You have to sit in a specific chair and you can only go to that coffee house back in time. And there's also the coffee in itself. The whole time travel thing starts when you drink a certain cup of coffee while sitting in this chair, and then while you are back in the past, you have to finish that cup of coffee before it gets cold to be able to return. This was a really interesting, magical story. You get to follow different characters as they go back in the past to reconnect, to tell a story, to give someone a letter. So it's just a few different stories wrapped into one about this coffee house and about their time travel. Really enjoyed this. I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5. Next up, we have Homegoing by Yaa Gyasi. This one is a story about two stepsisters, Effia and Essie. One is sold into slavery, the other one is a slave trader's wife. We then get to follow each of the sisters through their family generations, so their kids, their grandkids, and so on and so forth, and see where that takes them from that beginning of them being set into two very different lifestyles. This was a hard read, but a really good read. I am in awe that this is a debut novel. It's so well written. I will say though, I got a little bit confused by all of the characters, and it made it kind of hard to get extremely emotionally involved with the characters because we are shifting through characters quite quickly, but still a really interesting and important read that tells stories of racism, of slavery, of events happening through time that is really heartbreaking, but also it's about love, it's about family, friendship, and it's definitely worth a read. I ended up giving this 4 out of 5. Next up, we have The House with a Clock in Its Walls by John Bellairs. This is the story about Louis. Louis is orphaned and has to move to his uncle Jonathan's house, who it turns out is a wizard. And Louis then starts to learn magic from him, and is also discovering a lot of weird things about the house that they're living in. And one of the things is a clock that is hidden in the house's walls, and there's something harrowing about this clock and the destiny it has been created for. I love the idea of it. I thought the premise was really interesting. I liked the characters a lot, but I thought that everything just resolved extremely quickly at some point in this story, and it could definitely have been quite a bit longer just to dive more into the story and the magic. And I don't know, I would have just loved to have stayed in this story for a longer period of time. I will, however, continue on with the series and see what I think of it, but for the first book, I ended up giving that a 3 out of 5. Now, that being said, I would really recommend the movie adaptation of this book, which is on Netflix. It has Jack Black and Cate Blanchett in it, and it's just really, really wonderful. I think this is one of the rare cases where I actually enjoyed the movie more than I enjoyed the book. Next up, we have a graphic novel, and that is Primer, which is by Jennifer Muro and Thomas Krajewski, and the artwork is by Gretel Lusky. This was just such a different and fun and new kind of superhero graphic novel that I absolutely fell in love with. I wish this had existed while I was a teenager, because I know I would have just adored it back then as well. It's about Ashley. She has a father who's a criminal, and he used his daughter to kind of help him do crime, and he's now imprisoned, and Ashley is sent from foster home to foster home, and she's then put in the home of Kitsch and Yuka Noland. Kitsch is an artist just like Ashley is. Yuka works at a tech company, and she has made these paints that will give people certain kind of powers. So she's working with the government, and she made these paints, but she's worried that they're going to fall into the wrong hands, or they're going to be used in a way that's not good. So she swaps the real paints with a suitcase of dummy paints, and then she brings the real ones home. Ashley then finds them and starts experimenting with them and becomes somewhat of a superhero with all its challenges that comes with that. It's so much fun. The artwork is beautiful. It has just so much vibrant colors, and it's so much fun, and I can't wait to see what happens in the next one. I ended up giving this 5 out of 5. Now, the next one is an audiobook that I listened to, and that is Too Much and Never Enough: How My Family Created the World's Most Dangerous Man by Mary L. Trump. Now, for those of you who've been following me for a while, you know how I feel about Trump. He is definitely not my favorite person in the world, and I don't think he is fit as president. This audiobook was interesting, although I don't think it added that much new to the table, except for kind of understanding how he has become the person that he is because of his upbringing. And it was kind of interesting to see how his needs as a professional psychologist and therapist kind of psychoanalyzes a lot of the things that he does. But it felt more like Mary used this book to kind of tell the tragic story of her father. But yeah, interesting, but like I said, I don't think it brought that much new to the table. But yeah, I ended up giving it a 3 out of 5. Next up, we have The Right Swipe by Alisha Rai. I have this book in physical form somewhere. My pregnancy brain and me have put it somewhere, and I have no idea where that somewhere is. I've been going through all of my shelves, I've been going through my backpacks and my bags, but I can't find it, so I don't know where it is. But anyways, it is a romance novel. It is a story about Rhiannon. Rhiannon has her own dating app company, and she is trying to buy up another dating company as well. When trying to meet up with one of the owners of the other dating company, she finds out that the guy that kind of represents the company now and helps out, which is the nephew of one of the owners, he is the guy that she had a one-night stand with earlier that summer, and he ghosted her, and she's bitter. She really liked him, but she's bitter, and ghosting is just one of the things that she hates. So they have to kind of try to work together. She's still attracted to him, but she's also having a hard time trusting him and letting go of all of the fear that is surrounding the emotions and feelings she has towards Samson. I thought that The Right Swipe was really funny and interesting read. Rhiannon is such an independent, tough woman. She's also funny, but she's really scared of being vulnerable, which I think a lot of people can relate to. There were a few things in this novel that I found to be a little bit unlikely, just like how Samson has been this pro athlete who's very well known, but he seems kind of unaware of the dating scene and all of the lingo around it, and he's just this really innocent guy. It just felt a bit weird to me that he was supposed to be so unaware of it all, but whenever the romance gets steamy, then he's then really into it and really there and very much knowing. So there were just a few things that felt a bit unlikely and kind of off, but I still really enjoyed this story, and it was a cute romance. I ended up giving it a 3.5 out of 5. Now, the last book that I read in the month of August was a book that I read as a reviewer for Read See Discovery. I've talked about this before. I get to pick and choose from a variety of books where I get the book for free in exchange for an honest review. So for this time around, I picked The Benevolent Lords of Sometimes Island by Scott Semegran. This is a story set in the 1980s with 4 young boys who go on an adventure and it goes wrong. They are bullied by one of the town bullies, and during a fight between them, one of the lead bullies drops his backpack, which is filled with cash and pot. And one of the younger boys picks up the backpack and brings it home with him, and then things kind of spiral out of control while Billy, this bully, tries to get his backpack back, and these 4 boys refuse to admit that they have it. So they decide to escape out onto an island and stay there for a weekend to kind of get away from these older bullies, and then everything just goes wrong. I think I went into this book expecting it to be something completely different. It is a thriller suspense novel, but on the synopsis, both Lord of the Flies and Stephen King was kind of mentioned, so I think I was expecting more horror, more gruesome, more maybe some supernatural going on, but that is not what the story is. So I think I would have had a completely different reading experience had I known the actual premise of the book. But that is not the author's fault. It is not the book's fault. It is on me for not reading it properly and making assumptions. Still, I thought that there was some really nice nostalgia to going on this adventure gone wrong with these boys in the 1980s and before the time of social media and cell phones and internet, because that is part of the time that I grew up as well, in the late 80s and start of the 90s. I think things got resolved really quickly at some point, and I would have loved to have seen more of the boys' thoughts and emotions while they were stuck on Sometimes Island. But all in all, the story is quite the thriller and a suspense novel with really, really great writing, and I really enjoyed the way that Scott Semegran told this story. I also really enjoyed the friendship between the boys. Hey, doggo. And how they all developed as characters throughout the story. So I would definitely recommend this book. I ended up giving it a 3.5 out of 5. So there you have it. Those are the books that I read in the month of August. Let me know in the comments down below what you've been reading lately. As always, I would love to know. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. And I will see you in my next video soon. Goodbye!